glad to be here, and glad to welcome some esteemed colleagues and acquaintances to the panel, many of whom I'm definitely aware of, but not yet actually properly met. So I'm very much in very nice company here, and I'm honoured to be facilitating this. So thank you all for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know our guests on the panel, we have Birud Seth, who is the CEO of Gupshup. Gupshup doing some absolutely amazing work in the conversational AI space. We have Madhu Sudhakar, CEO of AI Sera. AI Sera just featured in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and I'm sure that Madhu is going to tell us a little bit more about that as well. And we have Rob Lubo, who is the co-founder of Bot Copy. Again, doing some amazing work, and I'm a huge fan of your LinkedIn content, Rob. Big fan of all the work you're doing to educate the community. And so, well, let's maybe just kick off with a few introductions. My introductions are very, very shabby, and you all know yourselves a lot better than I do. So maybe Rob, we'll kick off with you, and then we'll go to Madhu, and then Birud, and then we'll get into the discussion. So please just take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, introduce your company, and the kind of work that you're doing, if the people aren't familiar.
Thank you. Kane. I'm Rob Lubo, and I'm the CMO and co-founder at Bot Copy. I'm also a writer and a conversational designer and dialogue flow developer. And I have a background in ad agencies. As a creative director, and I was one of the founding partners of Mad Mimi, which was an email marketing firm. So I've seen a lot of trends come and develop and evolve over time. I remember when websites were first an emerging trend. So it's exciting to see it now with chatbots and how it's evolving. Bot Copy is a cloud-compatible custom UI for web and app messaging systems and mobile experiences. So to put that in a more simple way, we're a SaaS that puts really smart chatbots onto websites in a really easy way. And I can get more into that probably as we go into more of the questions.
Cool. Sounds good. Madhu, we'll hand over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself and AI Sera.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kane, for having me and Stephen. We are an distinguished community of yours, so a pleasure to be with you guys. So my name is again Madhu Sudhakar. The company I represent is iSera. I'm the co-founder CEO of iSera. What iSera does, I think of it as like we are a B2B company. We're focused on B2B, B2C organizations. We're an enterprise company trying to solve problems related to customer service, customer intelligence, sales and marketing, all the way to help desk to the DevOps. And to me, the conversation AI is a much bigger concept than just chatbots. So think of the AI bots are not just about creating dialogue flows or writing your own. You shouldn't be writing dialogue flows anymore. The future of AI should be is what we want this thing is the dynamic flow should be created dynamically based on the conversations that are already happening with the users, whether the conversations are sitting on your Slack logs, Teams logs, web logs, it could be in your call transcript, voice transcript. People should not be writing manual flows. Okay, and that's where we want to really do it. If you do that, then we are no different than creating old decision trees that people have been doing it for years to come, right? So idea is we are trying to leverage this to create a next generation of customer workflows, AI workflows. Bot should understand what's happening from the user request is breakdown, and then engage the user from a context perspective, derive the meaning, and then make the flows as dynamic as possible so that you don't have to manually sit to it. Otherwise, you have to throw this army corps of engineers to really maintain the bots. The maintaining the bot costs more than the bot itself.
Interesting. It'd be interesting to get into some of that. We will definitely jump into that as we get through. And congratulations on the Gartner Magic Quadrant niche player feature there as well. That's really good. Cool. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. That sounds really good. Birud, introduce yourself, please. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Gupshup. But hearing a lot of headlines coming from Gupshup in the last couple of months, so you're obviously doing some really good, impressive stuff. So please do tell us a bit more.
Sure. Thanks for having me here. I'm Birud Seth. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Gupshup. We improve the way businesses engage with their customers, right, by enabling conversational engagement, right? So we have a comprehensive platform that, sort of 3 layers of the stack. The basic layer is providing connectivity across SMS, voice, WhatsApp, Telegram, and many other channels. The next layer is sort of the conversational tools, right, for marketing, commerce, and support, sort of the whole customer lifecycle. And then we even go beyond by templatizing some of this for specific industry verticals and geographies and so on. And yeah, I think, we focus a lot on emerging markets where I think the adoption of conversational experiences and chatbots actually has been far greater than in the Western markets in many ways. So we are sort of riding that wave, driving a lot of growth, and happy to share more about it as well.
Definitely. Where would you define the emerging markets? Are you based? Did you come out of India initially?
Yeah, well, I'm based in the Bay Area, but we have the bulk of our businesses in India, and now growing to LATAM, Southeast Asia, and then other places as well. So, really, I think one important point, if I can make, is, messaging, mobile messaging really is just an incremental channel in the US, because the bulk of digital business happens on the web, maybe email a little bit. But when you go to emerging markets, messaging is sort of the primary digital backbone, which is why businesses and consumers want to do everything in messaging. So I think that's really fertile territory for creating these conversational experiences.
Nice. Yeah, I suppose there's a lot of places such as India and the like, and possibly, I don't know whether China would fall into that, because that is fairly, well developed and such, but certainly definitely countries where mobile has entered as the predominant internet device. So maybe it's the laptop and the computer might have been skipped, and all of a sudden mobile is the predominant kind of device, and messaging definitely being very popular on those kind of channels.
Yeah,
sorry, go on.
No, they leapfrogged, and China already with WeChat is doing a lot of that. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Quick mention for those of you tuning in. If you do have any questions about some of this stuff, we'll see how much time we have to get into some details. It would be good to get detailed. I know the title of this is Big Picture, which usually might lead you to believe that it's quite high level, but I'm recognizing some of the names here and there, and I think that we've got some people who really understand this stuff, so we might have a chance to get into some details. So please do, if you have any questions for our panel or for myself, please do stick them in the comments or in the questions here. I'll keep tabs on that, and I will surface the relevant ones as and when we when we arise to it. So might be a good place to start then. It sounds as though there's a mixture of kind of like channels that you all kind of collectively support. We have we've got messaging, Birud, as you just mentioned. Rob, you're coming at things mostly from a web perspective, it sounds like. And then you've got Mudu, who is it voice first is your predominant kind of strong point, or is it a combination of both?
Both. I think that's a key point, Ken. I think the issue that we do is you should basically bring the channels to where users are hanging around. My message is, wherever the users are, you need to support that. You cannot say I'll do only messaging, or I'll do WeChat, or I'll do Facebook. So we support all of them. Voice is one, digital channels, people could be in Slack, it could be Teams, web chat, SMS, right? I think the key is wherever the users hang around, the conversational AI solution should support those channels as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So from your experience, where do you think, well, maybe it's come on to like industry specific stuff in a moment, like whether there's certain industries that are seeing, certain kind of like adoption trends or whatever. But I'm always curious, because there's so many different channels available, essentially most businesses, most of the time on most of their channels, they're having conversations anyway. Social media arguably could be seen as a series of conversations beginning with an original post, then comments. YouTube, very much the same, comments. You've got Google My Business with messaging, you've got WhatsApp, you mentioned there Slack, you've got the phone, you've got the website, which is very much becoming kind of like chat first, even if it's live chat. So all of the channels that businesses have are pretty much conversational. So one could argue or make a case for businesses pretty much just being a series of conversations with customers that are either at the front end of a transaction, during a transaction, or at the back end of a transaction. And so I'm curious to get your perspectives on, from your kind of experience, where do you think some of the like really best examples are of kind of a use case and channel fit? So for example, you might say that a chatbot might be a really good place for FAQ, kind of like product questions, research questions, or maybe messaging in certain markets might be good for, like, tracking deliveries or whatever. Different channels have strong points, don't they? And they lend themselves to different use cases. So I'm wondering whether we can kind of just pick each of your brains. And again, maybe we'll start with Rob, to shed some light a little bit on what is the sweet spot for the best channel and use case combinations that you've either worked on or observed over the last, say, 12 months or so?
I can go. Rob, you want to go?
Sorry, we'll kick off with Rob. Just let him. Are you there?
Yeah, of course, the best channel is always where your users are. And that's what Mudu said. And I agree with that. And the best use case is going to be, where you're having the most activity being aimed at people. So if you have a question or a concern or a task that has to be handled by individual humans at a huge volume, then trying to chip away at that would be a solid use case. So to put those two together, we at BotCopy focus on web chat. We do think that where it's heading in the next 10 years, a good indicator of your success is how well you can spread these conversational experiences across more and more channels, voice over time, et cetera. But we see website as a starting place. One of the biggest challenges companies is where to start. The website is, anyone can access it. It's easy to go there. You often see people going there to get basic answers, kiosk style questions like how late are you open, or just things that people are kind of too lazy or too busy to go searching through an FAQ section of your website. So we see that as a good place to start, especially for high volume, easy to answer questions, but also for questions that require tasks like where you have to, for instance, pass a JWT token. People may not know what that means, but authentication, things that typically require a person to go into your account, verify that you are who you say you are, and then handle some things. That can all be handled through the website, as well as chiming in on different pages of the website, saying like, oh, I see that you're looking at this page. Maybe I can help you with this. So it's kind of like if you have a front end layer, it can sort of watch what you're doing and what you're clicking on and respond proactively. So we really do love that channel. That's not to say that other channels aren't spectacular. And again, eventually people who are using that web channel want to train that agent over time so that they can then export that agent to other channels eventually.
Nice. Go on, Mudu. You were saying, what's your thoughts on, at the moment, best examples of channel and use case fit at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, very good question. So I think, look, for me, I think if I look at the employees for our organization, small, medium business to large, if it's for internal employees for any organization, they'll be in 3 channels pretty much. It is Microsoft Teams, it is Zoom, it is Slack, right? They're not going to be in messaging. They won't be doing WhatsApp. It's internal to your organizations. Can think of like you're running a company, your company employees will be there. For customer service, what I've been seeing there for customer intel, like sales, marketing, you want an intel about a user coming to your site. Those tend to be much more on the website or mobile side, mobile applications, right? They tend to be there. Social media will be used, but it's a lesser signal there. Because if somebody is coming to your site, he's asking a question, he wants to buy certain things, he wants to understand more product, they tend to be a lot more on the web page, mobile or desktop page with mobile apps. Some companies have provided mobile app like the banking. So banking will use literally all the mobile apps, right? Then if you take this to the other extreme that you're talking about, which is people who are in the social media side, which is people posting on Twitter, Facebook, WeChat, they tend to use it much more for social media signals. All right, that's more for very top of the funnel. People are looking for information, finding information, etc. So depending on the problem that you're doing, you can engage users in all 3 channels.
Interesting. Birud, what are your thoughts on that kind of? Because I imagine that the markets that you're serving, I would imagine that some of the use cases might get deeper into the funnel, do they? Transactional based services and stuff like that. I wonder if you can shed some light on the kind of use cases that you're seeing across those messaging channels that you specialize in.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a night and day difference, right? I think, look, in the US, we've had a little bit of this hype cycle, people say, right? When Facebook Messenger launched their APIs in 2016, we were their launch partners. We're literally the first bot platform. So we've seen all of this, and the promise was there, but the adoption never happened anywhere near that scale because people don't use Facebook Messenger as frequently. And of course, Slack is used heavily in businesses, but then again, it's a limited number of users and so on. And this whole vision, in-app sort of also defeats the purpose because the whole point of a chatbot is not to have to download the app in the first place. In-web chat as well, it's really that web chat is a sideshow while the real business happens on the main website, right? So I'm not undermining any of this. I'm just saying that for a variety of reasons, the chatbot technology has been way ahead of consumer adoption of it, at least in the US markets. But then when you go to emerging markets where people are spending all their time, right, on WhatsApp, on Telegram, on SMS, right? So much so that now commerce, e-commerce is happening. You can actually do shopping and checkout and catalog and payments and transactions right inside the messaging experience, right? I mean, so what would typically happen on the website in the US or would happen inside mobile apps, the core part of the digital transaction is now happening in messaging experiences, right? So we are saying things like, marketing and deals and offers and, commerce and shopping and catalog transactions and so on. I can give you a ton of mainstream use cases, right? You have a real estate company which lets you list apartments by taking a picture on WhatsApp, which is a lot easier than uploading through a website. You have an education company where you can take a photo of the calculus problem and will instantly send you a response. There is conversational banking where you can literally do the whole end-to-end banking experience, sort of like a Neo app, again, through these messaging experiences. Commerce, deals, promotions, offers, airline booking, upgrading flights, rescheduling package delivery, you name it, right? I'm talking about the core of what happens by hundreds of millions of users, right? The core digital business and transactions are happening in a different geography, in a different medium. And I think that is where, really, it's not a hype cycle. It's not a sideshow. It is the primary digital backbone where really commerce and everything is happening. So we're seeing a lot of traction of the kind that I would have expected to see in the US back in 2016. Never happened, still not realized its full potential in the way that it becomes the new website. It's almost like in the emerging markets, your chatbot is very likely for a business, is very likely their only digital presence, not an incremental channel in addition to the website and their app and other things. It is perhaps the only channel, almost like in China, where WeChat, in many cases, for most offline businesses, is really their only digital presence, right? So that, to me, is the real significance of how big this is, how big this can be. And it really, in a way, I think, in a way, the US is a developed market, so there's so many other things already that this is just sort of incremental. I think in emerging markets, it's really the main thing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. That, I mean, you look at companies like maybe Capital One, who is like a real standout example of an organization that's really kind of like AI first, and almost to the point where, not quite, but they're on the verge of having their initial touch point being AI mediated across most channels. And so they're kind of shaping themselves up, which is the way I think that most enterprises will end up in, however long it'll take. But the first touch point across most channels, given that most channels are conversational, will be an AI. And it sounds as though in some of those emerging markets, given that the channels are perhaps fewer, organizations are getting there a little bit quicker. I'm wondering whether, because one of the questions here from Prashanth is around some of the differences perhaps in the adoption of these solutions in the West versus in East. And I think that, Birud, I think you shined a really good light there from the emerging market perspective. I'm wondering if we can get Rob and Madhu's take on the adoption of this stuff in the West as it compares to the East. Maybe Madhu will start with you and then hand over to Rob.
No, I think absolutely. Look, I think adoption is happening everywhere, right? So at least for us, we started the company. We are based in US. So my initial customers are in US. Then we have now customers in Europe and Asia. So I think the choice is the world is flat, right? So there's no limit to it. I think the use cases in Asia tend to be a lot more different. It'll be more commerce related, e-commerce related, more on retail, right? Whereas in US, it's tend to be a lot more B2B, B2C for businesses. Not that there is no AI chatbots or chatbots for commerce. There is there, but there's a lot more value for the higher items like customers who want to do database issues, or customers who are interested in cloud services, customers who want to do about cybersecurity. The area that we have not discussed, Ken, is cybersecurity. Take an example. If somebody attacks you, you have a phishing attack going on, you have ransomware. Are you going to wait until somebody attacks your network and take all the steal and open up a request to your IT admin? That's too late. All the things have already gone to the other side of the world. So I think you'll see, even in the cybersecurity, I call it the consumerization of security, where the user will instantly get on a chat channel, talk to a cybersecurity, try to protect his phishing attack or ransomware attack. That hasn't happened yet. So you'll see the adoption of conversational AI in cybersecurity world in big way. Because and from a consumer side, not just from a business side, right? You're sitting at home, you're getting an attack. So I think with increasingly the world being so much security threat, cybersecurity will be a next big battleground for conversational AI. But look, all the use cases that people discuss here all make sense. But I think each country, each region will have different use cases. US and North America tend to be a lot more B2B, B2C use cases. Europe kind of aligns with that. Asia tend to be a lot more commerce, retail in those spaces.
Does that concur with your observations, Rob? Maybe it's building on to both of those questions. One is generally the adoption of this kind of technology, and then two, any kind of industries in particular that you think are adopting this more heavily than others.
I think that in the US, for instance, typically what consumers will do if they want to rent an apartment or buy a home or sell a home is they'll visit a website. So we have a client, Realogy. They get millions and millions of people coming to, like, say, the Century 21 website every month, possibly even like 1 million a day or something, huge amount of volume. And they discover they're not doing it through like a WeChat, like you see in Asia, or through WhatsApp. They're going to the website. And right away, a bot will pop up and say, hey, I can make this faster for you. I can match you with the right broker in your area. And they'll say, okay, and they'll click on the bot. And so that adoption seems to be working well. But to me, it's what we're seeing at Bot Copy is it's not website versus mobile apps or mobile channels. Sometimes we have a bot in Canvas, for instance, which is an education environment in a classroom, or we'll have a bot that's living within like a Riot Games account. For instance, Riot Games would have users who were, their account was frozen and they had to figure out why, and then a chatbot would pop up within that system and help them. More than where the channel is, if the bot pops up and kind of sets the expectation and works well, then users will interact with it, as opposed to, close it out and say, this sucks, I'm going to call a person. So to me, the adoption really relies on how good the execution is. And that brings us back to the back-end functionality and that deep kind of cloud NLU intelligence to make sure that people can use NLU, type in their natural language, and have a fluid communication with their computer, because that's really the main barrier.
Sounds very much like you're kind of leaning on that concept of setting defaults. You have the chatbot pop up immediately. It kind of positions itself as this is just the way that you interact with this website kind of thing, which is always been the challenge of standalone voice assistant platforms like Alexa and Google Assistant, for example. It's always an effort for a brand to get traffic onto that. You almost have to take traffic from one place and shift it somewhere else, whereas you may as well just serve them wherever they are. Sounds as though, Biru, you're suggesting that the adoption is naturally there, and so these AI assistants in the messaging channel in those emerging markets is again a default. A little bit like if you call a call center. If you call a call center and you end up speaking to a bot, you'll just speak to them because it's just a default way of adopting it, which I think is a really sensible way of getting this stuff adopted more widely. Thank you, Madhu and Biru, there for responding to some of the questions that we have coming through in the chat. By all means, if you do have questions, continue to put them in here. I'm always curious. You all have specialisms in either certain channels or certain industries. I'm always curious about industries that are not utilizing, excuse me, this technology as much as they could be, and where you think the opportunities are for, we could go through industries. We've mentioned already retail. There's questions and comments in here about healthcare. The typical adoption, Madhu, you've mentioned internal use cases, those horizontal use cases around like IT support, HR, stuff like that. You've got industries like banking. We mentioned Capital One, insurance, financial services, government services, debt collection. All these service-based kind of industries are kind of adopting this stuff, I would say, perhaps more than others, and you could put retail in there as well. Is there any industries in particular that you think are really just there's a real ripe opportunity, and for some reason or other it's just not quite happening? Biru, we'll start with you, maybe from your perspective. Any industries or use cases that you think are just ripe for this stuff that haven't quite manifested themselves as quickly as you might have thought?
Well, I think that's, I feel or I felt for 5 or 6 years now, right, since 2016, when this was supposed to take off a lot, that in the US businesses didn't take it off as much as they should, and they're starting to right now, and I'm excited about it. I think not to belabor the point, but I think in the markets that we operate, we are seeing it's a cross section of businesses, right? There are small businesses, large, across retail and commerce, across banking, across education and healthcare, and travel and hospitality and so on, right? And many, many mainstream cases. I think the big picture, this is a big picture panel, right? So the one big picture idea, if I can throw out, really is that, at least in these markets that we focus on, chatbots and conversational experiences are really like the new website, right? Think of the messaging app as the new browser. Think of the bot or the conversational experience as the new website. And when you put it in that context, right, by analogy, in the mid 90s, when that happened, businesses realized that this is the digital storefront. This is where customers are coming in from. This is where you got to have a presence. And with hindsight, there are millions and billions of websites, and there are tools like WordPress and Shopify for building these websites. In almost exactly the same way now in these other markets, right? Because the web didn't happen quite as much, and even the app usage is sort of less so. But these conversational experiences are really becoming the primary digital storefront where every industry, every business is going to have to build this. And that is massive, right? A decade from now, we'll look back and find millions, maybe more of conversational experiences. Virtually every business will have to do it, and they'll have to do it to support every kind of use case, right? So it's really just an order of magnitude, right? It's not to say that it's not going to, of course, it's a giant market. Of course, the Western markets will take to it. It's just that in many ways, right, because other technology is so much more evolved in the West, I think this remains sort of an incremental additional thing versus the main thing in these other markets, which, they didn't have the earlier platforms developed as much. So they're leapfrogging now to this new technology. So it's really exciting. I think you're going to see where, billions of people, millions of conversational experiences. I mean, that scale is really super exciting for us. Yeah.
Definitely. I do believe that every company in time, the default touch point will be AI mediated, without a doubt. Given that we've only got a minute left, maybe we'll kind of build on that question, and we'll go to Rob and then finally to Mudu for the last word on those kind of like, we've heard from Birud there around this stuff is just gonna keep growing, and every organization is going to be developing this stuff for a whole bunch of different use cases, and it's just going to be proliferating either faster than we think or slower than we think. Rob, what do you think the future holds for this kind of technology? What are some of the trends that you're seeing, and where's it heading?
Oh, well, I agree with Birud. It's going to explode, continually, because the ability to communicate with computer technology and with companies in a fluid way with no friction is going to help you succeed. It's going to bring your costs down. At the end of the day, we're talking about automation. A lot of companies don't feel like saying that because nobody wants to be seen as, hey, we're replacing people with robots. But even the companies that said that 2-3 years ago, guess what? Now they're diving in full on with chatbots and automating things. And that's not to say that they're there to replace humans. Of course, we're trying to free up humans to do more human-related things. But if your competitors are automating these things that can be automated and you're not, you can't survive. So this is a race to the top in terms of having the best technologies to do it in the best way in the most ways. So I would want to say one very quick thing. We were talking to a top university in the US, and they were sort of hemming and hawing and saying, look, universities operate at the speed of government. And so even though we love what you guys are offering and we love the promise of it, it's going to take a while. And that's one of the big barriers, is that there's just, some bureaucracy stopping progress. And then government, same thing. We'd love to see more schools and more governments adopting this technology faster. Because that impacts students, that impacts citizens who are paying taxes, and that has a real effect on well-being in the world. And those are the slowest adopters, although we do have some really fantastic superstars in those categories as well.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for an amazing panel.